Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our final webinar in the series this semester, hosted in collaboration with the Human Resources Management Association of Barbados, also known as HRMAB. I am Dawn Marie Holder, the Career Counseling Specialist in the Office of Student Services. Today, we are joined by Ms. Brittany Brathwaite, who will share on global careers. Brittany Brathwaite is Director of Human Resources for the Montrose Group of Companies. She's the president of HRMAB, and she's a member of the Human Resource Development Council of Barbados, Wages Council of Barbados, and she's a former board member of the Barbados Vocational Training Board. She's the founder and principal consultant of a regional HR company, having successfully completed projects with the ILO Regional Office, Profiles Caribbean, and Massey Learning Institute. She is a graduate of the International Training Center of the International Labour Organization, Turin, Italy, and a graduate of the Global Young Leaders Program through the International Organization of Employers. Please join me in welcoming Miss Brittany Brathwaite to chat with us today. Brittany, over to you.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Happy to see everyone online to discuss what will culminate our HRMAB's engagement, well, this first engagement with the Office of Student Services with UWI. Thank you to Dawn Marie, before I get started, for engaging with us as you have and having put on this entire series. For anybody who may have missed the previous sessions, those are going to be made available as well. Now, today, and I'm Brittany, just for the avoidance of any doubt, but today we're going to be looking at global careers. And what I wanted to do today was not just use random statistics or share things that may be projected by international agencies, but I would have recently engaged with the Ministry of Labour in my role as a council member on the Human Resources Development Council in rewriting the Human Resources Development Strategy for Barbados, along with a few other colleagues. And what I've done is to encapsulate a number of industries in this presentation and in our discussion today that will be the focus of our nation. So these are things that our government or the governance throughout the years will be looking to invest in. And no fear, because I know I'm talking a lot about Barbados and today is supposed to be about global careers. Yes, I'm talking about it because the HRD strategy has been rewritten to start to reshape our people as global citizens, hence the encapsulation of what is in the strategy in alignment with what is trending globally for me to present today. If at any point anyone wants to engage as we go through the session, feel free to drop your questions in the question chat box. I think the question and answer segment is up and anybody can drop questions there, or you can feel free to drop questions or any statements in the chat box for me to respond to. I have both of them up simultaneously as we go. Let's jump into it. Now, the new and emerging industries. And these are not random new and emerging industries that I've placed here, but these are the statistically proven new and emerging industries. I think for young people, what is important to note as we talk about industries before we go into actual jobs is that if you are going into industries, it is important to go into that industry as a formalized player. So a lot of young people coming out of tertiary education are starting businesses, which is fantastic because you'll see a sector here called the third sector or the sharing sector. And I'm going to explain what all of these, the sharing economy, all of these sectors look different. And I'll explain what they mean. Whatever sector you choose to go into, whatever career path you choose to enter, I am going to encourage you to do so as a formal partner and not an informal partner. And what that means is versus starting a business where you go in, or versus getting a job where you go in, you don't pay any statutory deductions, you don't ensure that you're registered with the regulatory authorities, you don't ensure that you've done everything in the correct manner. What you're doing is creating an unsustainable business model for yourself. So we're not going to be young forever. and in the context of creating yourself as a global citizen. Even if you go into one of these industries locally and you decide to go into another industry when you go abroad to study or you go abroad to work, being formalized is critical to exporting your products and services. A lot of international agencies, part of their due diligence with engaging with entrepreneurs, engaging with individuals, is ensuring that persons are active members of society in the right way. And it can be difficult, particularly for entrepreneurs with small and medium enterprises to formalize their businesses, but it's worth every single penny if you're looking at sustainability. And I want to itemize that today is supposed to be about global careers. And a career is much more than just a one job or much more than just the start of a company. It really means an expansive time frame of being active in a sector. So I'm giving advice based on that and what would lead to sustainability for you in any of these industries. So let's jump into the blue and the green economy. And we know in Barbados particularly, and we've seen it in Trinidad and in a few other CARICOM states, we've seen ministries called the blue ministry or the blue or maritime ministry. And this is because this industry is creating on average, they're supposed to be in 2021, over 150,000 new jobs created across CARICOM through this industry alone. And when we talk about jobs in the industry, no, it does not mean that you have to be a fisherman. You can be doing aquaponics, you can be purifying water, you can be, running a firm that's actually collating different types of energy. All of these are feasible, not just jobs, but careers and sustainable careers in the industry. Wind production, solar production. We recently saw graduates of the University of the West Indies, and they actually put on a showcase for a client of mine where they're using the seaweed and they're producing natural products. Obviously, scaling those type of businesses takes time, but it's a phenomenal type of business because they will probably be able to scale up globally. And that's the industry, not just that exists as a new industry, but that industry is also receiving a lot of funding. So there are specific programs through the Blue Ministry here in Barbados that are funded for entrepreneurs. So if any of you so happen to be interested in that industry, there are specific programs, not just for entrepreneurs, but if you want to undertake a vocational skill in the blue or the green economy, that's also feasible. If you want to look for investment partners, that's also feasible. There are lots of opportunities also being offered by the Barbados Light and Power with their new Lambert's project, extending to persons opportunities to understand solar farming and wind farming and energy farming. So if you're interested in an internship in relation to the blue and the green economy, you also need to look into the businesses that operate in those spaces here in Barbados. And no, it's not just the Barbados Light and Power and the Barbados Water Authority. We're talking about any solar player. There's a new business launch called Cloud Solar, and that business is going to be buying acres to create solar fields and solar plants to be feeding back into the primary business. All of these are companies that you really need to be taking note of and looking into the space in that particular industry where there are players who can give you the opportunity to see what it's like and if it's really for you. The great thing is that the blue and the green economy is really an active industry globally. To not just to have the theoretical knowledge to function in that industry, but to be able to get into that industry and have a vocational skill that you can put to work is fantastic. So I have a question here. Which type of industry would the medical marijuana industry fit into? That is going to be in the under STEAM. You see where we have STEAM? That's going to kind of fit there because that is going to fit into the medical industry. And we're going to get to that because the medical industry and the medical services and health services industry is booming. Not just medical marijuana. Medical marijuana is trending, but I would say widen your scope. look at health services, and we'll get there. I'll give you some information on that. Now, the sharing economy. This is very important because the sharing economy speaks to transforming traditional sectors. So right now, our tourism sector in Barbados alone employs about 35,000 people. That's a lot of people when we approximate the number of working people in Barbados. What's happening with that sector, though, as we can see in COVID-19, is, it has totally been debilitated because of the impact of the pandemic. What you're seeing, or how you're seeing companies pivot, is by exactly this industry, which is the sharing economy. And what that means is it looks at subsectors or sub-players in wider industries. So tourism would be the wider industry that we're looking at. So who would be the sub-players in here? Airbnbs, apartments. We're talking about persons who are renting rooms, formalized, because I know a lot of people do these things informally. But that's what the sharing economy describes. It looks at wider traditional sectors and seeing how that sector can be broken down into pieces for more people to play a role. So an important part of the sharing economy and an active example here would actually be the TAP program that the government instituted here. And that is also something that's found in Switzerland. So rather than the government take on all of the public sector transport, they extend permits to persons who are willing, and they split the public transport responsibility out. We've seen these models, across Europe, but also in Singapore, particularly for transportation via train, etc., and via port of entries. So the Caribbean region is really one of the last regions in the world to have their port of entry still be solely run by the public sector. And that is a very interesting industry for anybody on this call to look into as well. Exports and imports. It is always thriving. It is one of the things that has thrived throughout the pandemic. It's not very difficult to get into logistics or to get into brokerage or to have a merger of the two or to have an import or an export business. But that sharing economy, so every time you look at a job that you would want to get into, let's say you want to get into the legal field is a wide field. What or how would that economy be shared? So if we look at law widely, what are these sub-players in there? We talk about commercial law, we talk about international law, etc. What is the trending, or what would be the sustainable job based on what is trending? And we'll get to that as well. International law is law. So the sharing economy examples, and a real example, tourism. How would you go about as an entrepreneur securing a small Airbnb or registering for Airbnb? Are you looking at the spaces and the things or the requisite registrations to get those things done properly? So I do know persons who have small houses and they rent rooms out, etc. The issue is they have not formalized that business though. But the sharing economy is a booming economy, and the government will also be funding, not just here, but across CARICOM and across the world, looking for players to get into that industry. The beauty in the sharing economy is you can export your services. So no, if you are part of the tourism sector, you don't necessarily only need to lean on locals. You can export that product. You can export that service. And similarly with transportation, if you have a car rental business, for example, you can export that product. It's a product that you can sell to persons who are coming in to rent your Airbnb. Being smart about how you look at the sharing economy and leveraging that as a young person is important. The creative and the cultural industries. I think it's important to touch on this specifically because it's one of these industries that in the past people have been dissuaded from joining, but we've seen it done so exceptionally well for many, many young people globally. And obviously we have the best example of that in Rihanna. And as a result of the same, we see a lot more young people getting into the arts, getting into cultural and creative, really, jobs and careers. We have good examples of how people have leveraged that and turned it into personal brands. We have Aisha Komasong is a very good example of how she has shaped her cultural, and she really is Barbadiana in the way that she projects, in the way that she dances. And we have a few other examples as well. Seth Bavel, these are people who are active in that space as an industry. And yes, some people may, dismiss it and call it nonsense, but it's an active global industry. These are things that you can export. These you see a lot. Nandi, good example. Thank you, Nandi. She's more work up dancing, but she's globalized her service as well. So you see her dancing, with Masha Montano. She I think she auditioned for some international team. I can't remember what it was, some cheerleading team. But yes, so these are persons who have used their culture and the creative industry to export a service. And they've built brands out of it. Some people have launched off and launched fitness gear. Some people have launched shoes. These are all, it sounds abstract, but I really want us to understand none of this is abstract. It's extremely feasible. If we are looking for a point of contact to help leverage the relationship in the cultural and the creative industries, you really do need to visit the Ministry of the Youth Affairs, and they are located in, I think they're in, I call it Trademark, but that's not the name of the building. I can't remember. Oh, Sky Mall. It's the Sky Mall building. And they have fantastic initiatives, some funded, some non-funded, to get persons who are interested in launching careers in the cultural and creative industries, really getting them a launch pad to go there. So, I personally know persons who have, through programs in the ministry, gone on to sing on Broadway. They've gone on to be in the, there's a Broadway show on, I think it's The Lion King. I know two Barbadians who are now in that show as a result of shaping their careers through the cultural industries. And again, a lot of Barbadian parents and regional parents in the past have dissuaded persons from doing it, but it's a phenomenal industry to be a part of. And because entertainment sells, entertainment is just that, it sells. And what that means is your talent and what you can leverage is something that you have full control of. So it doesn't necessarily stop selling. When the global economy comes to a halt, you can always sell what you have because it's honed by you. Now, the third sector, and this would be for those people who are on the call, who are active volunteers, because the third sector really looks at non-governmental organizations, religious-based organizations, etc., playing a more critical role in the economy. So let's say, for example, church choirs who in the past, had not been able to globalize and go overseas and perform with global artists. That is being made possible. Let's say you work for, or you are very involved in a non-governmental organization, and it may be Key Club or Circle K, I think, at the tertiary level, or it may be some other NGO. What is being really touted at the international level is how people can start to monetize their time and monetize their contributions to the NGOs. So the third sector really is an emerging sector. It's not as monetarily beneficial right now as the other sectors, but globally, the International Labour Organization is injecting monies into this. Through the third sector at a local level. If you want to become involved in that, you can visit the Ministry of Labour to find out how you can monetize some of what you may be doing through a volunteer organization, or how you can get more involved in the ministry's plan to transform the third sector into a global sector. And I hope everybody's taking notes of the places and the things that I'm recommending, because these are things that we really want at the national level for young people to reach out and say that they want or to get involved in, so that the HRD strategy comes to life. Now, STEAM, and this is the new language that's being used versus STEM. And STEM really was, brought to the fore about 15 or 20 years ago. But STEAM is what everyone is now referring to. And we're going to go a bit more into STEAM in my third slide, not this one, not in the one after this one, but the one after that one. Because STEAM looks at technology, it looks at, educational services, etc. But it also looks at nuanced jobs in those specific sectors. So we're going to get into STEAM a bit more. Now, before I go off the industry slide, anybody has questions about the broader industries that I would have just discussed before I jump into the jobs and the specific careers that you can be considering? Anyone with any questions, just drop them in the chat box. Or feel free, I don't know if you guys can unmute, I don't think so, but feel free to drop them in the question and answer box or the chat box. Now, these are the fastest growing occupations. And this is also supported by the World Economic Forum as well. And if you look at all of these, they fall into all of the categories that I would have had on the first slide. So solar energy technicians, one of the biggest challenges that solar farming persons here and around the world are finding is that they don't have people who are qualified in solar energy. So I mean, there's a dearth of talent in solar energy and wind energy because persons just weren't doing it. It just wasn't something that was done. So 10 or 12 years ago, the curricula across the world globally really wasn't focusing on solar energy. With the change in a lot of curricula, then, we've seen, or we are seeing, an emergence of that talent. But those are the two top fastest growing occupations that has been recorded in the world between 2018 and now. And based on the way that the industry is going and the amount of monies being made in the industries, they are projected to be two of the highest paid jobs or careers in the future as well. Home health aides, and this it goes into the health services, so personal care aides, occupational therapy assistants. And what kind of jolted me is that we are seeing less general physicians on these fast-growing occupations and or emerging occupations lists. Less general physicians and more specialized physicians. The nurse practitioner particularly is a job that is in global demand. And a nurse practitioner is extremely highly trained, but what you're seeing is the nurse practitioner, because there's not the same entry-level exam that may be required, like in the US, there's a USMLE, or the medical board program exam that may be required in the UK. The nurse practitioner program, wherever you do that, it can be applicable globally. It makes it easier to export that service, and that nurse practitioner job is really growing exponentially. Statisticians, really a dearth of statisticians, and I don't know if anybody on the call is into statistics, but financial analysts are also in growing demand, and in growing demand by global companies. And the reason for that is a lot of companies, rather than being big in their physical presence, they want to be small, have a small physical presence, but be huge globally. And therefore they need people who understand global markets and to be able to analyze how they can leverage, financial decisions in Singapore versus financial decisions in South Africa. So statisticians are also really required, but more so financial analysts. It repeats the physical therapy assistants here. It's unfortunate that we see so many medical services jobs, and I only say that because as the more that I read about the reasons these jobs are coming about, it really is because of the deteriorating health of the human race. So medical services is doing really, really, really well, And you need all of these occupational therapy assistants and all these physical assistants because people have really taken poor care of themselves. And if you look to the region as your market in the first case versus just going globally, like going to North America or South America, in the region, we have a tremendously aging population across the CARICOM region. And if you go as far as Haiti and other places, so if you were considering exporting your services, not just globally, but in the first instance regionally, and you're going into the medical services field, you have a very, very big market. Hopefully it's not the same in 50 years, but right now the market is huge. Mathematicians, operation research analysts, and app developers. Now, app developers are at the bottom of that list, but I really want that to be top of mind. And not just app developers, but I'd say software developers. So I think you can take off application and just say software developers. Software developers are in extremely high demand, particularly post-COVID. Now, pre-COVID, there were as well, but post-COVID, absolutely. Every business in the world has had to pivot. So every business has had to find an online medium to sell or to get their services out there. And every business in the world needs a developer, a really good developer. Whether you're a web developer or you're developing software or you're developing content, skills are in high demand and they're top dollar being paid. We also know that there are at least maybe 5 or 6 international financial firms, MasterCard being one of them, American Visa card being one of them, etc., who are looking to launch digital currencies. I think Bahamas, was it Bahamas? I think Bahamas launched their digital currency sometime last week. All of that is done through developers. So they're developers building that software, and they're earning tremendous amounts of money because of their skills. So software or app development, if you are considering it or if you're in it, absolutely an absolutely tremendous field to be in. I couldn't do it. I don't have the brain for it, but it's a tremendous field to be a part of at this time. What I would say is, if you are exporting your services as a software developer, just be cognizant of where you are and to whom you export your services, because the data protection legislation in different territories differ. So you may be a developer and you are developing software that you're developing, on your own, and you're having a company take it on, and rather than have it patented, you've just given it away, but it's really worth $20 million. And I've seen that. I've actually seen that happen. So just be cognizant that dependent on the career field that you go into, in the way that you export your skills or your products globally, you have to really have really solid legal advice. And the same thing with nurse practitioners. So you may be a practicing nurse practitioner in St. Lucia, and when you move maybe to Latin America, the rules around patient confidentiality and or the right to choose to die may differ. All of those things are important for you to take note of. So it's not just having a skill and being able to export the skill, but it's important to know what the legislative landscape is around you exporting those skills as well. And Maria, I'll also share these slides so that everybody can have them. So nobody needs to kind of be taking notes. I'll just share them. Now, the World Economic Forum just concluded I think it was their quarterly meeting in September. And they would have issued what they call the 10 best jobs for the future. And this is based on globally what is being required. And this is not just by large enterprises, but by large, medium, and small enterprises around the world. So these are just some of them. Again, the nurse practitioner is on there. The medical sonographer, health services, market research analyst, the developer is on there, computer systems analyst, operations research analyst, the physical therapist, dental hygienist. And as you guys are looking at careers and you are looking at globally exporting your skills, I think one of the key takeaways is to look at where you're going and what what demographic of that society looks like. So if there's an aging population, if you're moving to a small island territory, for example, and there's an aging population, maybe a health services clinic would be really good, or a home care nurse. That as an occupation would be really good. If you are possibly going to a specific part of the UK, and I've seen people do this, they go to a part of the UK where they know that, you know, the care of the teeth is poor, and they've started firms as dental hygienists, and they've really pivoted because of what is happening in that space in the world. So as you look at careers, or as you look at what you're studying, and where you can map it to, look at places in the world that need you. So the global market is just that. It's a fantastic global market, and there are people around the world that need your services. So look at that. Look at where in the world needs you. How does it, or what would it take for you to get there, in relation to visas, etc. And then how do you transplant the skills that you have there? Some people, like developers, they don't have to go anywhere. They can sit on their couch in, you know, wherever, Pennsylvania, and they can render services to people across the world. That's also fantastic. And if you're in that, kudos to you, because it's an excellent place to be. To people like operation research analysts and marketing research analysts, that's also quite feasible. It's quite feasible to produce your services remotely, and to charge for that, and to live where you want to live. And people are doing it very well. Again, look at the places around the world that require your services. Look at what economies are where they're booming and where they're not booming. And that's why I started with the industry slide, because as you look at global careers, you really need to be cognizant of what industries are trending in what countries. Don't just assume because you have a skill that is going to be required in a country. Look at where you're going and how best that skill can be applied. And these are some more trending industries. And the one I have not mentioned yet is international law. And for anybody who, you know, may not be studying law, but you're considering it, or considering doing a vocational or a skill diploma or something like that post your tertiary education, the international law is a fantastic area to get into. And it goes back to what I was saying before. There are a lot of businesses who want to be domiciled in a low tax region. So for example, a lot of people want to come here, a lot of people want to go to Cayman. They want to be domiciled, or they want their base to be a low tax region, but they want to export services globally. So imagine being the general counsel for a firm like that. So you can work comfortably from Barbados, but you are trained in international law, you're au fait with the different spaces that the business wants to operate in. That is a phenomenal thing to have. And there are more and more large, medium, and small companies looking for people who are trained in international law, and not just commercial law, but international law, because the market is not just global for you, but the market is global for businesses. So businesses want to export beyond, you know, where they're domiciled. So they need a legal mind to help them do that. The same logic applies with the financial analysis, and being able to guide on risk, where risk can be taken, where they may not best be taken, etc. Now, the content creation and marketing, I think those are two fields that are somewhat similar to the cultural and creative fields that or the cultural and creative industry I had spoken to earlier, where, you know, persons kind of didn't take those career paths very seriously in the past, but they really are critical to the businesses, particularly, who want to do anything. So any business that wants to do anything needs content, and they need to market. And therefore, a lot of people are forming small agencies, or a lot of entrepreneurs are, you know, really earning a lot of money globally by offering content creation services. So I, for example, and Nicholas knows this, HRMAB uses this one guy who does a lot of our flyers and stuff. And just the other day, I was having a conversation with a colleague at, you know, a large firm, and they were like, "You know him?" was like, yep, he does our work. And I've actually had that conversation with 3 or 4 people over the past 6 weeks. He's been able to, I mean, seamlessly extend and export his services to so many people across the island and regionally as well. So he's getting jobs regionally because that content creation and marketing and branding, branding should also be in there. I forgot to add it. All of that is something that can be done from the comfort of your home, but you as an entrepreneur can export that service, and you can do it tremendously well. Now, I think I had it on the previous slide, and that's the market research. Market research is also quite critical to those businesses who are looking to be physically small, but globally, but be global in existence. And the market research, or persons going into market research, are also doing very, very well. One example we would have of that would be locally, and not quite market, but political research would be Peter Wickham. He's done a phenomenal job with exporting his service as a political analyst across the region and internationally. And that's just one example. There are lots of other people who have done the same thing, who have started research firms. I have a colleague and a friend, Henri. Henri does fantastic research, and he's able to export his services to businesses here and globally as well. So it's really about finding that space and finding the people who need you, and offering your services to those people, because it's required. It's just to find those spaces. And I don't think it necessarily takes, we have an internet. The internet is a world on its own. All of this you can find once you take the time and curate the time to ensure that you're looking in the right spaces. I have a question, and feel free to start with the questions because we're just about at the end of the slide. So if you have any questions, any things for clarity that were on any of these slides, feel free to shoot them forward to me. So somebody asked, can YouTube as someone from the Caribbean be used under content creation or marketing? I don't think YouTube is used as effectively in the Caribbean as it has been done internationally. I agree with that. I think not that is it not used. I've seen some regional people use it well. I think the region, or the Caribbean region, is not necessarily in tune, or they don't use YouTube in the same way that other people use YouTube. But it's a very effective tool. Again, look at your target market. So a lot of us, because we live in the Caribbean, we create a YouTube channel thinking that our audience is the Caribbean. Our audience is the world. So how do you generate interest around the world based on the topic of interest that you have talking about? And I can't remember the lady's name, but there's this lady who, she's vegan. And I'm not even really sure what she sells, but I just love to listen to her voice. And she started on YouTube as well. And there's some people who've done this exact thing. So Issa Rae is one phenomenal example of a person starting a YouTube channel. Tabitha Brown, thank you, Nicholas. I was in the know. Issa Rae is an example of that. There is Supergirl, and that's her Twitter name, but she's of Indian descent, and she's done a phenomenal job of taking her YouTube page and launching bigger and better from that. We have a few examples who have a Caribbean base as well, but again, you have to be willing to create a product that is global, or a product that is globally recognized. And we have examples here. We have Rupi, we have Lil Rick, and there are people who have not had to water down their cultural nuance, and they've been able to sell their culture as is. The Jamaicans do a phenomenal job of it all over the world. So I think it's to find the points that are sellable globally. Sometimes we have a YouTube channel and we may be selling something that people can't connect with. So that's a question to ask yourself as well. So I really want to open the floor for questions though, because I only got 2 or 3 questions so far. So I want to take some more questions from everybody before I talk anymore, because it's already 12:45. So I don't want to talk too much. So do you think the amount of persons entering the educational sector is evened out by the amount of persons leaving the sector or shying away from it? In your opinion, would this sector be one which should be considered in the future? So yes, education does fall under STEAM, educational services. And education not only falls under STEAM, but I would say it falls under one of those sharing economies as well. So of course you should look at it in the future, but look at it not in the traditional way. So don't just look at it, as getting a job as a teacher at primary or secondary school. Can you teach English online to students in China? Can you meet with, the High Commission here to arrange that program? Pivot the way that you would offer educational services is what I would say. So yes, education is always going to sell, but it's always going to be something that can be sold. But I think we have to look at the way in which are the mediums through which we sell education. And don't restrict ourselves to thinking, the only way you can be in education is to be a teacher in a physical school. You can start your own online school. You can, start a nursery. You can export your services worldwide to people within a particular demographic. You can reach out to a demographic of differently able persons to offer services in the educational service industry. So yes, the simple answer is yes, should definitely be considered, but not in a traditional way because the world is changing. Good question. Any other questions? Any questions from anybody? Any questions from anyone? I want to, sorry, I have a slide I was missing, but I'm just going to talk about it. And that's really in the industry of financial services. So yes, there was a lot of mention here about financial analysis, etc. But offering financial services is also quite big. Now, I know like 2 slides ago, there was a mention of the job of a statistician. What is also really high in demand would be those persons who, naturally have an inclination towards numbers. They're short, and I'm one of the people that result for them being short because my brain is not that. But if that's you, I'd say that that's an industry that absolutely needs people. It needs people that industry needs people to work on research. It needs not just for a basic financial analysis and that kind of thing, but to work on medical research, to work on cures for different things. And there are grants that exist. There are international grants, for example, that the European Union, they kind of can't find anybody to apply for these grants because nobody's doing it. But the more you open yourself to those spaces and the more you find out what's available, the easier it is to get into those spaces. So just the other day, I read about 2 different Caribbean nationals who are, at NASA working. And then I saw a young Vincentian young lady, and I think she's about maybe 21 or 22. And she got into NASA to do an internship. So, and it's not that these opportunities are outside of the scope of anybody, but for them to be realistic to you, they have to be on your radar. And she said, when she applied, yes, it was a global opportunity, but what she did really was to look at what they required many years in advance. And she honed the skills, not just academically, but the vocational skills that NASA was looking for. So that at the time of her application for that internship, she was kind of to the top of their list. So looking and keep being aware of different things is also very important. Any questions? Any other questions in the chat box at all? I know, well, Nicholas, I didn't expect you to join, but I'm happy that you're here. Seeing that this is also the end of our series, and you were the coordinator for the series, is there any closing thing you want to say to kind of tie all of the different various things that we had together, with Global Careers being the final one today?
Hey, Brett, you're putting me on the spot, but well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nicholas Roberts. For those on the call who may not know me, I just want to say thank you to all the students who may have joined. I guess the recurring theme that you may have seen coming out of all of the workshops, whether you join one or you join all or just a few, is that you have to be able to be innovative, one, and to be able to pivot, especially in a COVID environment and post COVID. So I know whilst you're at university, you're studying a specific field of study. Sometimes even when you come out of university, is not something that you may unfortunately not stay in, or if you do, you may pivot into going into another field. So what I wanted to take away from these series is to one, take what you're studying seriously, see to how you can diversify your skill set, whether it be that even if you go into another field or you use your degree of study to pursue a different career path, but just be as flexible and agile as possible in terms of when you go out into the job market. That would be my advice to you in terms of the series. We are looking to have another one next semester, but if anything, you would be hearing some more information about that from Don Marie once we finalize. So thank you once again, and I hope the different webinars were as informative for you as they were for me, because I learned some stuff myself from all of the different panelists and presenters. So thanks once again.
Thank you, Nicholas, so much. I want to say in relation to this specific webinar, that global careers don't really find you, you have to find them. So if there's any summative advice that I would give, I would say that you really need to constantly be looking for what is required, where it's required, and where your services can best be served. Otherwise, you will find yourself kind of locked into to this market. So you really have to be proactive if you intend to seek or to go after a global career or a regional career. Find the opportunities that you can volunteer. Find the spaces that you can lend some time. Find the spaces that you can really get experience prior to getting into the actual space. That's very important. It's something that even now I'm doing. Like, I'm just volunteering my time to help write policies and write regional papers, because that's a space that I want to get into and exist. But I need the experience or more experience in it. So it's important to keep your eyes and your ears to the ground, have a radar globally on what you are, where you want to exist, and where those services or products are required. And going back to what I said at the beginning, if you are an entrepreneur in any of these spaces, it's very important to enter these spaces in a formal way, not in an informal way. Because once you seek to engage with persons who are operating in these industries, they're going to ask you to formalize, and it's usually an impediment. For example, if you're a consultant and you want to get on a project with the ILO, you can't do that if your business isn't registered. You can't do that if you don't have a due diligence done, and your business isn't vetted. So all of those things are important. If you're a financial analyst and you want to work with Bloomberg, even if it's for 2 months to work on a small part of a financial analyst project, you need to be registered. So if you're an entrepreneur and you're looking to go into this field, same thing applies with law. Ensure that you obviously you have to go to the bar, but ensure that you're registered, dependent on the space that you're functioning in, and ensure that you go about it in the correct way. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself as an entrepreneur not having a sustainable model and not being able to engage globally with other partners. So you're kind of going to be out there swimming on your own. I want to thank you very much, Dawn Marie. I don't know if you want to say any final words, but I really want to thank the Office of Student Services for engaging with HRMAB for the past 4 webinars. I have heard fantastic feedback, and we've been able to touch quite a number of people through these webinars. So that's really, really good, and we look forward to a mutually beneficial relationship, Dawn Marie, not just now, but indefinitely in the future. So thank you very much.
Thank you as well, Brittany. You have given us a lot to think about. I think students may not have had a lot of questions because they've really been thinking about what you were sharing today. You spoke to them about the different industries that they can consider. And I think it is very important to, with the example you shared about the international internship, that there is an intentionality that is required to assist you as you navigate the global options and opportunities that are available to you. So we have a lot of access. There are, one of the things that COVID has done is really kind of fast tracked a lot of things that people were doing, a lot of things that people were thinking about. So today you had an opportunity to think a little deeper about what a global career could look like. And you're not just thinking about a particular profession, but consider how your skills are applicable across the different areas, what type of skills might be useful. And also, as the question was posed about YouTube and how, are we really leveraging YouTube in the way that we could, considering who your audience is, is this skill that you have, is this interest that you have, is this something that people might be potentially willing to pay money for, and who might those persons be, so that as you engage, whether it's on YouTube, whether it is elsewhere, that you are thinking about who your audience is, what the services that you have potentially to provide, and how you could go about developing your skills. So definitely a lot for you to think about. Please, we provided the communication here for HRMAB to follow up with them directly with the Office of Student Services. And please give us your feedback so that we can verify, what other topics you might want us to share some more about, and to help you to continue to build as you prepare for global citizenship, which is one of the core values and one of the marking, the defining traits that we would want our UE graduates to possess. So thinking about how you can become a global citizen, and Ms. Brathwaite has really provided some things, some useful tools for you to consider as you prepare to make your mark on the world. So thank you for spending another Wednesday lunchtime with us. And this brings to the end these Wednesday lunchtime sessions for now. So thank you for your participation, and take care. All the very best as you transition and continue during the semester. Thank you again, HRMAB. Thank you, Mr. Nicholas Roberts, Ms. Brittany Brathwaite. Thank you as well for your collaboration and working with us. Take care and have.
Thanks, Marie. Bye-bye.
You're most welcome. Bye bye.
Thanks. Bye bye.